Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regrets. Live with every breath, see my message start to spread. And I had so many dreams, then you hit your teens. Life ain't really what it seems, try to find out what it means. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win. I don't want no fake love, I want the real stuff. Everybody listen up, cause I'll only say it once. I'm gonna show you all the path, if you want it bad. I'm gonna show you where it's at, yeah, how you can get it back. Yeah, cause I ain't never done, I'll be number one. Working hella hard until I get just what I want, yeah. Rises like the sun, yeah, fatal like a gun. Shooter's gonna shoot and I'm gonna shoot until I fall, yeah. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.
Hey everybody, how are you? Hopefully, yes, I see my microphone moving now. I didn't see it before because I accidentally forgot to remove the news, or my presentation, I should say. So I hope everyone's having a good Friday night. I wasn't planning on going live, but today, as you can see from my title, Kevin Monahan was sentenced today for firing off his rifle twice, and one of those shots went through a car and hit Kaylin Gillis, who was 20, and ultimately caused her to lose her life. So he was sentenced today, and I did watch the sentencing prior, and the judge, I like the judge. He said what I believe all of us were thinking when we watched some of the testimony and saw some of the news clips. So I'm happy that he was sentenced to 25 to life. He will spend the rest of his life in prison, most likely. So, yes. Hey, Pookie. So thanks, everyone, for being here. I see Sinner Gina, Thunder. Good to see you. Elaine, Sunnyside. Lynn. Tasha, how's it going? So, getting right into this, the first thing is a news clip that kind of gives a summary of what happened in court today. And then I do have an article that I will read that gives a little bit more information as to what happened before the sentencing. And then we have a video with reaction from the prosecution and reaction from the defense team. So let's get into this.
Is a News Channel 13 breaking news update.
Good morning. I'm Tiffany Payton. We have breaking news from the Washington County Courthouse. A sentence has been handed down for Kevin Monahan. Our Kaylin Gillis was just inside the courtroom. Kaylin, what can you tell us?
Tiffany, good morning to you. Yeah, convicted murderer Kevin Monahan was just sentenced here in Washington County Court. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for the shooting death of Kaylin Gillis. The judge also giving Monahan additional time for that tampering with evidence charge. It was very emotional inside the courtroom. The sentencing was scheduled to start around 9 o'clock this morning, started closer to 9:30, but very emotional, lots of tears, lots of hugs in the courtroom. We heard victim impact statements from 3 people that they were Kaylin Gillis's father, her boyfriend, and one of her very close friends, someone she's been friends with for 7 years. All 3 of them very emotional while speaking. Kaylin was a passenger in an SUV that had mistakenly turned up Monahan's driveway in the town of Hebron last April. He fired 2 shots from his porch. The last shot hit Kaylin in the neck and killed her. Monahan was convicted just over a month ago of second-degree murder, reckless endangerment, and tampering with evidence. Family and friends inside the courtroom were wearing Justice for Kaylin t-shirts.
And so that's interesting because for those of you who were here with me at the beginning when I initially started talking about at least the start of the trial, the court had agreed that family members, friends, community members would not wear any clothing or attire that had anything to, I guess, elicit a response, an emotional response from the jury. So they were asked not to wear any clothing in regards to Kaylin. And so when she just said that they were dressed in shirts with Kaylin, Justice for Kaylin, that's pretty awesome.
Of them were wearing shirts and sweatshirts that said Kaylin, always in our hearts and never forgotten. They say Monahan being sent to prison gives them closure, even though nothing will bring Kaylin Gillis back. They're just glad to see justice for Kaylin. Even though she was only 20 years old, she made a huge impact on so many people. Her father on the stand saying that Kaylin was ambitious and kind. She was the family's pride and joy. Losing her has left them with an
Yeah, I think so, Sunnyside, because the jury had already, handed down their verdict of guilty. So I'm thinking because it was sentencing, they, like they said, also 3 of the, they had 3 victim impact statements. So I think, again, just honoring Kaylin and remembering her, because some of what the judge says in his sentencing, we didn't get to see because they didn't live stream or weren't allowed to video the testimony. And some of what Mr. Monahan said, I was appalled, but I will let you all be the judge of that when the judge reads his sentencing.
Indescribable void that, of course, could never be filled. He says every day they wake up to the harsh reality that she is no longer here and they will never see her beautiful face or hug her again. Just emotional words. He says that this is obviously broken the family, and Kaylin's boyfriend, Blake, who was driving the car that night that she was killed, also gave a very emotional impact statement saying he still blames himself. Again, he was the one driving that car, and he asked the judge to give Monahan the maximum sentence, and the judge did. Judge Adam Michelini, again, sentencing Monahan to 25 years to life in prison for that second-degree murder charge. He also had some strong words to say to Monahan. And again, just to recap, sentenced 25 years to life for that second-degree murder charge here in Washington County Court. Monahan shot and killed Kaylin Gillis the night of April 15th in the town of Hebron. She was a passenger in an SUV driving in his driveway at the time. Again, he fired 2 shots. That last shot was fatal. Kaylin was struck in the neck, and she...
And for those of you who may not have been here when I had reviewed some of the testimony, Mr. Monahan had alleged that he fired a warning shot. And again, this all happened around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So it was pitch black in the middle of nowhere. They turned up the wrong driveway. When they realized their mistake, they began to turn around. And as the car Kaylin was riding in was in its third point of a 3-point turn, that is when Mr. Monahan shot a second round. And that round is what killed Kaylin. And his claim was that he turned around, and as he was moving toward the vehicles, he tripped over a nail or something. He tripped in his flip-flops, and the gun fired on its own. That was his defense. Hey, Scorpio, how are you?
She was killed. And again, just reading my notes here, the judge had a lot of things to say, a lot of strong, harsh words coming from Judge Adam Michelini in the courtroom. He was saying that if he believes that if Monahan were let free, if he were be allowed to be free, he believes Monahan would do the same thing. He feels Monahan has no remorse and has taken no responsibility for his actions. He says that was proven during the trial when Monahan repeatedly lied about things, about what happened, about what he did, about pulling that trigger, saying it was accidental. Obviously, the jury found in less than 2 hours that that shot was a purpose, that he did that intentionally to kill Kaylin Gillis that night. So again, just a very emotional day in the courtroom. We also heard from Kaylin's friend, Alexandra. She's been friends with Kaylin for 7 years. She was the one leading them to that party that night. They were supposed to be going to a party. But of course, as I said, they turned into Monahan's driveway, an accident, and their night ended there. And of course, Kaylin's life ended as well. Just a horrible story, tragic story. Very hard to be inside the courtroom and hear the emotional impact statements from Kaylin's father and again, her boyfriend and her friends. And so many people in the courtroom, again, wearing T-shirts saying justice for Kaylin. So many people reacting when the judge handed down that sentence. Of course, lots of tears, lots of screams, lots of hugs. And again, the judge had a lot of strong words to say. He said he feels.
Yeah, it did. The verdict came in really quick. Yep, less than 2 hours. And I remember the one video of the defense reaction had said once we heard the jury was back with a verdict, we knew what it most likely was. And one of his attorneys, I don't remember his name offhand, but during the incident, Mr. Monahan refused to talk to police and was holed up in his home with his wife. And in that time, he had called his lawyer. And his lawyer, actually, let me back up. So only when Mr. Monahan's lawyer told him that someone was killed did Mr. Monahan finally surrender to police, and he was taken into custody. So again, I agree with the statement that he had no remorse. The judge also said that he believed that Mr. Monahan would do this again if he, was not in prison. So I tend to agree.
That Monahan has no remorse and would do the same exact thing again. We know that was really hard for the family. I actually, before the sentencing, I spoke to one of Kaylin Gillis's aunts, and she told me that, of course, she still thinks about Kaylin every single day, and her whole life has been ruined as well. So this has made such an impact, not just Kaylin's immediate family, but far beyond that, throughout the Capital Region. The judge says, I'm giving you this sentence because we need to tell people that you cannot just shoot and kill someone that is driving in your driveway. So again, a lot to unpack here from inside the courthouse. We will bring you much more updates here throughout the day. Of course, we'll be here live at noon, and of course online as well. saw, WNYT.com. You can follow along there. We'll have a lot on social media as well. We'll be out here again live at noon and throughout the day. So we'll see you then. Tiffany, we'll send it back to you.
Kaylin, thank you with the breaking details. Kevin Monahan sentenced to 25 years to life. We will have team coverage starting at News Channel 13 live at noon. We will have team coverage with Kaylin Erla and Sabrina Dami. We'll check back in with you in about 90 minutes.
Okay, so so I'm going to go to this article, which is from ABC News. And so again, New York man sentenced to 25 years to life for fatally shooting woman who pulled into wrong driveway. Kaylin Gillis, 20, was in the passenger seat when she was shot in April 2023. I agree, Pookie. At least they can, start to heal a little bit. Kevin Monahan, a New York man who fatally shot a woman in a car that turned into the wrong driveway, was sentenced Friday to 25 years to life for his second-degree murder conviction. Monahan was also sentenced to 2 1/3 to 7 years for reckless endangerment to run concurrently and 1 1/3 to 4 years for tampering with physical evidence to run consecutively. On the night of April 15th, 2023, Kaylin Gillis, 20, and her friends mistakenly pulled into Monahan's long, dark driveway in rural Hebron, New York, while they were looking for a friend's house. The group of friends was traveling in 2 cars and a motorcycle, and Gillis was a passenger in one of the cars, driven by her boyfriend. And there is a photo of Kaylin. Judge Adam Michelini slammed Monahan in court, saying, quote, "Your first instinct was to lie about what happened, and you repeatedly lied in such a cold and calculating manner, and the jury saw right through your lies," end quote. Monahan, 65, standing on his deck, fired at least 2 shots toward the group and fatally hit Gillis in the neck. He was convicted in January. The defendant's time is the only thing that we can use to begin to set the scales of justice right, Prosecutor Chris Morris said to the judge Friday before the sentence was imposed. How much of Kevin Monahan's time is demanded to begin to set the injustice to just? All of it. All of his time. Every year, every month, every week, day, and hour. All of his time is what justice here today demands. Morris said the sentence also should serve as a warning to others. Every person out there needs to know that you can't murder someone because they accidentally pulled into your driveway. I've seen his remorse, defense attorney Kurt Mauser said of his client. So Mr. Mauser is who Mr. Monahan had called after the incident. He lives with knowing that because of his actions, this poor young woman is dead. And there's a photo again of Mr. Monahan. Mussert said his heart breaks for the Gillis family and the Monahans, saying both families are, quote, irretrievably shattered. In killing Kaylin Gillis, you took away a friend, you took away a girlfriend, you took away a daughter, a granddaughter, and a sibling. You took away so much unrealized potential, the judge said. You also traumatized the young men and women who mistakenly drove up your driveway that night. This will scar them and traumatize them for the rest of their lives. Any remorse you have isn't for the harm you cause, the judge said. The only regret you have is that you're finally facing the consequences of your actions. You murdered Kaylin Gillis. You shot at a car full of people, and you didn't care what would happen. You deserve to spend the maximum time in prison allowable under our law, Michelini said. So we're going to go back to videos, and this is the actual sentencing. So we're going to watch this. It's about 9.5 minutes. Hey, Truth Seeker, how are you? Yeah, right, Scorpio. And especially, I mean, and in this case, Monahan's driveway looked like a road. I mean, it was pretty long. And actually, I'm going to let this play, but I will try to find, I'm going to get a map of his house again.
First, I really want to thank those of you who came up here today and gave victim impact statements. It was very important for me to hear those, and they're taken into account in my sentencing decision. And I want you to know that. So when I'm sentencing a defendant as a judge, there's certain principles that I think about. Attorney Morris touched on one, general deterrence. And that is sending a message to society at large that there's certain behaviors that will not be tolerated. And Mr. Gillis spoke to this in his victim impact statement. He said such acts of violence will not be tolerated in our society. I think it's important that people know that it is not okay to shoot people and kill them who drive down your driveway. I know in the county where we live and probably other countless rural areas, it's a pretty common occurrence to drive down a wrong driveway. It's a common occurrence for somebody to come down your driveway. And there's definite choices that you get to make at this time. And the choice made in this case is absolutely not acceptable.
And so here is, just so that for those of you who may not have been here earlier, so this is a map of the area where this occurred. The red pin is Mr. Monahan's home, and you can see his driveway. So his driveway is quite lengthy. So it goes up and then it wraps around, and then his home is here. The party that Kaylin and her friends were going to were actually over here. So they actually had turned up the driveway. They should have gone a little bit further, which was 9/10 of a mile. So not even a mile from their final destination. They should have pulled up here on Hebron Hills Road, and the house that they were hoping to get to was right here. And you can see how you would mistake this driveway for, oops, sorry about that. I don't know why this is doing this. Go away. Where you would go up, and again, it kind of curves around. So they made the mistake of driving up Mr. Monahan's driveway. Scorpio sting, I know, I'll look that up. I know they had said it occurred. Let me look that up really quick. It wasn't very long at all. I feel like they had said like 45 seconds. I'm gonna look up so I'll actually play the sentence. I'll continue the sentencing, and I will look that up because I know it wasn't very long at all.
First, I really want to thank those of you who came up here today and gave victim impact statements. It was very important for me to hear those, and they're taken into account in my sentencing decision. And I want you to know that. So when I'm sentencing a defendant as a judge, there's certain principles that I think about. Attorney Morris touched on one, general deterrence. And that is sending a message to society at large that there's certain behaviors that will not be tolerated. And Mr. Gillis spoke to this in his victim impact statement. He said such acts of violence will not be tolerated in our society. I think it's important that people know that it is not okay to shoot people and kill them who drive down your driveway. I know in the county where we live and probably other countless rural areas, it's a pretty common occurrence to drive down a wrong driveway. It's a common occurrence for somebody to come down your driveway. And there's definite choices that you get to make at this time. And the choice made in this case is absolutely not acceptable. Then I'm also guided by the principle of specific deterrence. Specific deterrence is directed directly at the defendant. It's saying, basically, you need to be prevented from doing things in the future. And Mr. Monahan, I think if you were released from prison, and, you know, people who commit murder generally don't recidivate a lot. They don't commit the same crime again. It's a low rate of recidivism. But with you, I think you really could possibly do the same thing again. It's obvious to me that you feel justified. You don't take any responsibility for the outcome of your actions. You just don't get it. The first thing you do on the witness stand when you come up here and testify is you made a joke to the jury about them finally being able to see your face.
So that's one thing that we hadn't heard when we reviewed the testimony based, the articles and the news clips. When he got on the stand, he made a joke. Sir, you took someone's life. I'm pretty sure making jokes is a little bit in bad taste. And I did find, so I think it was Scorpio. Yeah. So back to back. So, excuse me. It says, so they had driven up his driveway. Welsh and Rondeau, who were both the drivers, initiated 3-point turns to leave. And as he was backing up toward the house, so they were in their second point, going into their third point, Welsh said he heard a pop and noticed lights at the house had come on. Seconds later, he recalled what sounded like a gunshot, metal breaking inside the vehicle, and his friend Jacob Payne yelling in the back seat that someone was shooting at them. So again, it was seconds. And I also found, I had forgotten about this. Mr. Monahan was standing on his elevated porch more than 20 feet above the vehicles, which were about 80 feet away, and turning around. And we saw that they were turning around because the bullet had hit the back left corner of the vehicle. So it was seconds. Yes, they were leaving Sunnyside. They were in their second point going into their third point of their turn. And during the trial, he claimed, his defense also claimed that when he tripped over a nail wearing flip-flops and the gun fired itself. So, yeah, I agree. He's a coward.
You senselessly took the life of Kaylin Gillis, and you have the gall to sit here and talk about how you plan to finish up the work on your house and race motocross in the future. You don't deserve that. What would make you think that you deserve those things? Even when your attorney tried to get you to acknowledge that your home wasn't being invaded, you couldn't do it. You hesitated and said something to the effect of, "It sure felt like we were being invaded." He was trying to elicit out of you a response that somebody who took responsibility for their actions would have. And you couldn't even do that. Your first instinct was to lie about what happened, and you repeatedly lied in such a cold and calculating manner. And the jury saw right through your lies, and they rejected them. In killing Kaylin Gillis, you took away a friend, you took away a girlfriend, you took away a daughter, a granddaughter, and a sibling. You took away so much unrealized potential, her potential to enrich other people's lives and to contribute to our society. You also traumatize the young men and women who mistakenly drove up your driveway that night. You will scar them. This will scar them and traumatize them for the rest of their lives. Any remorse you have isn't for the harm you've caused. The only regret you have is that you're finally facing the consequences for your actions. You murdered Kaylin Gillis. You shot at a car full of people, and you didn't care what would happen, and you repeatedly lied about it. You deserve to spend the maximum time in prison allowable under our law. And I don't make this decision because it's easy. I make it because it's what's deserved. I make it because it's what's just. So as to the conviction of murder in the second degree, I sentence you to a term of 25 years to life in prison. For the conviction of reckless endangerment in the first degree, I'm following the law. I'm going to sentence you to a concurrent 2 1/3 to 7-year period of incarceration. As to tampering with physical evidence conviction, I can see why a court, might perhaps go along with concurrent because you received a 25-year life sentence to begin with. But there was a delay. There was a lot of time you had between when the police showed up and you tampered with evidence. You had a lot of time to concoct lies. You had a lot of time to do things to the weapon, to tamper with it, basically, to try and destroy evidence. And because of that time that you had to think of those things and the conscious efforts that you made to tamper with that evidence, I think it is right that you receive a consecutive term of incarceration for that charge. So that's a 1 1/3 to 4 years of imprisonment. There is a matter of a $300 surcharge, $25 crime victim assistance fee, and a $50 DNA fee. Attorney Frost, is your client in a position to pay those funds now?
Not today, Your Honor.
Okay. And then we also have a couple pieces of paperwork that need to be gone over. One is a signature to authorize for DNA.
And again, he has no response. In my opinion, he just looks defiant, appalled, just no emotion, nothing. And to also talk a little bit more about his wife. So she wasn't charged with anything. However, during the trial, she was the judge ruled that she could be treated as a hostile witness because when the defense was questioning her, she was animated. She answered their questions. She was very open. But when the prosecution questioned her, she became meek, quiet, evasive, not really answering the questions. So she was, the judge did allow her to be treated as a hostile witness. And also, in regards to the judge stating that he believed that in that time, because it was hours after the incident, that Mr. Monahan refused to speak to police. He was holed up in his home with his wife. And the testimony was that they had sat around the kitchen table talking. Well, I'm pretty sure they were talking about what story they were going to tell so that it matched up. So I agree with the judge. There was a lot of inconsistencies based on what we were able to read and hear. And he just has no remorse. I agree. Oh, yes, Scorpio, you're just about to say that, the look. Yeah, and that's the same way he looked during the actual trial. Just very arrogant.
Collection from your client, and the other is a notice of intent to appeal. We'll give those to you now for you to go over with your client. Okay.
On count 3, Judge, is that consecutive?
Consecutive.
It's consecutive to you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, have some kind of emotion or reaction, like just no reaction at all. Well, I guess he is a little, non-emotional, so I guess that could be an emotion. So I'm not exactly sure what they're signing here. Maybe he's signing his life away, not to make a joke because it is serious, but so again, he is 65 years old and he will have to serve at least 26 and a third years in prison. So he will be about 82, 83-ish when and if he would be able to leave. Nunya, yes, well, they're being quiet here. It was, actually, I'll pause it because as soon as I start talking, they're probably going to start talking. Where did it go? Here it is. So 25 years to life for a second-degree murder conviction, 2 1/3 to 7 years for reckless endangerment to run concurrently, and 1 1/3 to 4 years for tampering with evidence, with physical evidence, to run consecutively. So it will be an additional 1 1/3 to 4 years. So say 26 years, and he's 65 right now, he'd be 81, give or take. Yeah.
Check if I could, while we're waiting for the one, I would just, since I don't buy objection, just give me 7 seconds. Noted. All right, and what's being prepared right now, Mr. Monahan, is a notice of intent to appeal. Just make sure to go over that with your attorney
Okay.
and make what selection that you think is appropriate.
Thank you, Judge, for letting us know. So they were filing an intent to appeal, which we did hear the defense say they would be doing after the guilty verdict. They said that they did have, just means for appeal. And I did watch just a little bit of their reaction to the sentence. And Mr. Mazur, who is this one, I'm not sure what that one's name is, that lawyer, but the other lawyer is Mr. Mazur. He had some interesting things to say. So the DNA is probably for CODIS. I'm just assuming.
All right, we received the notice of intent to appeal. Anything further from the people?
No, thank you.
Anything further from defense counsel? All right, sir, you're remanded to the custody of the Washington County Jail. Then you'll be transferred to the custody of the New York State Department of Corrections for service of your sentence. We're concluded.
Oops. Nope. Didn't want to do that. Okay. So I did look up. Well, they were, applauding that, he's going to prison where, in my opinion, he belongs for recklessly shooting at vehicles with people in them. So in New York State, defendants convicted of a misdemeanor or felony must provide a DNA sample to the New York State DNA Databank. This has been the law since 2012. So not CODIS, but a statewide DNA databank. The DNA data bank fee is $50. The court requires the defendant to pay the fee even if they don't need to provide a new DNA sample. The law also applies retroactively to anyone convicted in the past who is still serving a sentence. Law enforcement officers use the DNA data bank to look for matches from other crimes. If an officer finds a match, the person whose DNA matches will become a suspect in the new or unsolved crime. And I did not know that New York has its own data bank. I thought everything was CODIS, but I guess it does. Hey, Glow, how's it going? So this is the prosecution. Oh, sorry about that. The prosecution response, and then we have the defense response.
Just had an opportunity to meet with.
And I apologize, none of these don't have closed captioning. I wish they did, but unfortunately, they do not.
The Gillis family, the extended family, plus the young adults, most of whom were here with their family members. And, one of the things I said to them was, thank you for their great respect for the institution, because if you've been following this throughout, you realize that for a 3-week period, they were ever present, but were always very respectful that it was a court of law. And today they finally were able to show some of their frustration and appreciation for the court, and but they still did it in a respectful way. And I think that's difficult, and yet they managed it, and I think is very appreciative. And so, what we had a chance to speak with them about was, our hope for them that this allows this chapter to close. The criminal justice system is difficult if you're not accustomed to it, and it's stressful. And now they can focus internally and support and move on to the next phase of healing. And it's going to be a long road, but they've showed great resolve, and we're confident that they'll manage as well. And they're very appreciative of your all's understanding of their very public desire to be private, because it's very difficult when you're thrown into these situations.
You mentioned the presence over the course of 2.5 weeks, basically 3 weeks. This trial involving a lot of witnesses who were younger, right, in their teens, in their 20s, kids who witnessed this traumatizing moment. Can you just speak to their actions on the stand throughout this trial, their resiliency and being able to go up, face this man, and talk about what happened? Can't be an easy thing to do.
No, and I guess I'll go backwards, right? So I had a chance.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what's going on with your audio.
That was empowering to her. She
oh my gosh, get it together, news
has
station.
been her evil, and I hope she grows from that. And I really think when you consider what his selfish acts put these kids through, the juxtaposition between him and them,
oh my God,
on the witness stand is spectacular.
All right, I'm just gonna jump a little bit. I don't know, that is not on my side. It's the news station.
Experience of horror, and yet did so with grace and through very difficult circumstance, right? They had to sit on a stand with a bunch of people watching and suffer the emotions of the fear that they had and the loss of a friend. And they did that and held up against cross-examination, where you had a defense say, we're not going to blame the kids, and then proceeded to blame the kids. He has a job to do, but they withstood that and told the truth. Conversely, Kevin had a fiction he told his attorneys, as you can see in their opening, and then he had a fiction that he maintained on the stand that was quite different. And that's the problem with fiction, right? Is it's hard to make a mesh if you're just making up a story, as opposed to the kids lived it, shared it, accepted that there were going to be differences, and really handled themselves admirably.
What do you think of the judge's remarks to Mr. Monahan that, while murder, in his view, is a low recidivism crime, he felt he could do this crime again if he was allowed?
I think, Judge Michelini in the most regal of fashions showed what the vast majority of people who paid attention to this view this as. It was the act of an angry, selfish male who had no regard for the life of other people. And when
Oh, for crying out loud.
about the trial, why would you expect him to not feel as though he has done nothing wrong? And if he has that view, then I would certainly submit that the judge was spot on, that he is a grave risk to society if he's ever released back into society, that he would do it yet again.
There appears to be some intent for an appeal, obviously, at some point. Is that something that your office starts looking at now, or kind of just taking this today and taking this victory?
Well, I think I said yesterday in an interview, I think about 1:30 in the morning on April 16th, when I got the call, once it's a likely homicide, that there's going to be an appeal. And so really, in much of the way we approach, all of your work is geared toward making sure that what we do is we pursue justice without fear or favor. That means you don't cut corners, you don't hide things, you share everything that you have. You don't rely on emotion. You present the facts to the jury in an orderly fashion and allow them to make the decision. And when you do that, you're comfortable that you'll be able to uphold our portion of the appeal. And for those that watched, Judge Michelini did a fabulous job maintaining a clean record. So we would expect an appeal. It's happens in most criminal cases. So certainly someone who's facing life in prison would file an appeal. So we've been preparing for it all along. It doesn't come as a surprise, and we're confident that the record will support an upholding of the conviction and the consecutive form of the sentence.
Just checking my memory. Alex Whiting was actually in Blake Walsh's car in the back seat, correct?
She was sitting immediately behind Kaylin, correct. And she was also, the two individuals in the back seat were hit with shrapnel from the car. So think about a car, it has the metal exterior shell, and then it has a plastic casing. And that, they all felt like something hit them. And then as you look through the investigation of the interior of the car, they really did. And so, to have those young
Oh my gosh,
experience that, to sit up there on the stand and with you all there, it's welcoming, but it's intimidating, and yet really persevered. And so that was no, she was on the other side of the car. She was on the passenger rear. So entered the driver's rear.
okay.
She was
all right. So I'm gonna stop this. Well, maybe I'll just keep fast forwarding. I'm sorry about this. Like, whatever the feedback, I know the audio is awful. And as he was talking, I was trying to find a different news station. That, because I can see that there's a news channel 6, Spectrum News. I'm still trying to see if I can find another news station. Maybe it's just the audio that the way they have it set up. I don't know, but it is like, that's really bad.
She was behind Kaylin. I'm sorry, I may have misspoke. Alex was sitting in the order in the car. Blake was driving. Kaylin was in the front passenger seat, and Alex was in the rear passenger side seat.
The shot hit the
All right, well, that's annoying. Okay, so let me, oh my word, let me add this back to, like, I saw it, my phone, it was circling. So I'm like, great. And then I was trying to get to YouTube and it said unavailable offline. And I was like, huh? I'm not offline. Oy vey. Yeah, I don't know why it did that. It's so weird. All right, so here we go.
You have a handful that do, and for some of them, this may correct their behavior.
Again. And I don't understand why, because my internet is fine. All right, so now it seems like it's doing okay. I'll try doing it once more. I can see it's like buffering on my phone. All right, let's try it again.
Scene unfold where starting with a young 911 dispatch officer, Ms. Carpenter, who had to handle both the kids and then immediately deal with Monahan. But her calm demeanor helped maintain a calm situation, responding law enforcement to a situation where the strategic advantage was held by whomever. They didn't know what the nature of the incident was other than shots fired, and they had a dead a young woman who'd been killed. They all approached it with just a calm approach, and it resulted in allowing the system to work and have him go to prison for the rest of his life. That's as much an important a takeaway as well, is that our system can still work. As an aside, sort of similarly related, that the supervisors, especially for Salem and Hebron, when this first happened, this is what people think of Washington County. And I think the reality is, no, they're not going to allow the act of an angry couple who took such a horrific act toward young people. That's not what defines Washington County. I think what defined Washington County is the response that night and the response throughout. We have today, I touched on it earlier with how respectful everyone was of the process and the system. And what that leads to is a trial that goes to conclusion. I mean, for those that were here, you watched, the jury came in every day dressed appropriately. They showed respect. So you get a system that works. And I think the effort of the Washington County Dispatch, law enforcement, the people in my office, I think that just shows really what this shows Washington County is, not the acts of the Monahans. Anything else?
You say the acts of the Monahans, so you believe that it's shared that Monahan Kevin pulled the trigger, but it's shared with both of them.
Yes, I mean, criminally, it's Kevin. But today there was a great discussion of justice and responsibility, and she was an active participant in the cover-up. You heard her lie on the 911 calls. You heard her lie on a body camera. She had an opportunity. Now, some would say, well, but then she had 9 months to choose, and when she took the stand, she chose, and that was her choice. But that does not exonerate her of moral responsibility for much of what happened that evening. And I think Christian also touched on it, and the judge did as well. This was not a reactive action. There was a preconceived notion when you look at how where the gun was and where her pistol was, right? All of that speaks to that this was not an accident.
And see, that's something we weren't privy to see. So I did write a note because I had talked about it before. Now that the sentencing is over, the trial's over, I'm going to see if I can request the transcripts of the trial so that we can have everything, all of the information and all of the testimony, because that's one thing I wondered as well, is because according to Mr. Monahan and his wife, they were sleeping and they heard, they thought they were under attack. So he told her to hide in the closet, but it was very bizarre. Like, their stories just weren't consistent. They were different, just strange.
And the jury got it right, obviously, and quickly. But I think that there's certainly responsibility extends to both. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dee. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, that audio was terrible, news station. Okay, so I did want to just quickly this was my live from a couple of months ago, and I just wanted to, they had talked about the car, so I wanted to show those of you who may not have seen the, oops. Oh my gosh. This is driving me nuts. Here's the car, and you can see that this is where the shot was fired. And so for the defense claiming the gun shot itself, that's pretty good aim towards a car. And so this is where the bullet entered the car. And then I am going to just play it because it then shows in the video how it, so here, from that point, here's the, the laser. Kaylin was sitting in this seat. So she was sitting in the passenger seat, and the bullet ended up hitting the passenger door, and then it fell on the floor. So that was just, I wanted to show that to everybody so that you had an idea of what it looked like. All right, so the last thing I have is the defense reaction to the sentencing, and this is about 5.5 minutes.
I can't voice that same confidence about the judge. I think every mistake he could make in terms of erring against the defense, he did. His sentencing sounded like a campaign speech, and this is an election year. I disagree with almost every decision he made during trial. There are many, many appellate issues which are going to be fleshed out because of his decisions. Having said that.
And so I think this is where I was kind of getting angry because, yes, it's an election year, but the judge also followed the law. According to New York State law, the minimum sentence for second-degree murder is 25 years to life. So he gave the minimum sentence for second-degree murder and the other charges. So, I mean, and the jury is who ultimately decided Mr. Monahan's fate. So I just thought this was, a little, I don't know, uncalled for, I guess. Hey, Kanuga, how are you?
I don't want to distract from the Gillis family's whatever artificial sense of closure. And I say artificial because there's a wonderful book that anybody who's grieving should read called The Myth of Closure by social scientist Pauline Boss. There's no such thing as closure with grief. As long as there's love, there will be grief. I learned that when my own brother was murdered in 1979, and I've lived with that since then. So this case, the people, the defense, we all upheld the integrity of the judicial system. Mistakes were made. The appellate courts will sort it out. And I stand with Art's statements that my heart does go out to the people who knew and loved Kaylin and are grieving for her loss.
Speaking of Judge Michelini, as you mentioned, he had some strong words to say. This is the only opportunity we get to hear from the judge in this way during a trial and a proceeding. Some of the things he said, what stood out to you? What do you find problematic?
Well, the first huge problem I have with what Judge Michelini said was the first thing he said to me before Kevin Monahan was ever arraigned, before there was grand jury minutes to read, before there was evidence, before there was testimony. And he acknowledged this on the last day of trial. He turned to me and said, "Kurt, this is a simple case." Now, no one who has ever tried a homicide case as a defense attorney or a prosecutor would call any homicide case a simple case. I can only conclude that before he took the bench, Judge Michelini never tried such a case. That set the tone for the rest of his participation in this trial. It wasn't a simple case. There were dozens of witnesses, hundreds of exhibits. He was proven wrong by the district attorney. It was anything but simple. He denied our use of expert witnesses. He denied the charge of criminally negligent homicide. He prompted the people.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't criminally negligent. Like, he did it on purpose. I mean, and so hindsight is 2020. This defense attorney was not this angry after the guilty verdict. So, he was disappointed in the verdict, but now he just seems angry.
People to object. He objected himself to defense questions. I have never seen a trial in which a judge severely limited the defense's right to cross-examine, as this judge did to Mr. Frost. So, the history of what I object to what the judge said goes back to his very first sentence, that this was a simple case. So I'm very mindful of the fact that we have a bizarre way of selecting judges in New York State by popular election, and I'm very mindful this is an election year.
I didn't listen to this whole interview, but man, he's going hard at this judge. Like, he followed the law.
I don't know if that had anything to do with what he said from the bench today, but I mean, I can see it from both sides. That's my lawyer training, but I also see that he made many, many errors that are going to have.
But so did your client. And he didn't even apologize. He didn't say he was sorry. It was all about him, that his soul is dead. The dramatics. I mean, a girl lost her life because of his client's disregard.
Have to be sorted out.
Lastly, did you get to speak with Kevin? His reaction in the moments after the sentencing today?
Well, that would be a violation of attorney-client privilege if I disclosed what Kevin said to counsel. So I'm not going to do that.
Can you share his emotion at least?
I'm not going to do that. That's the same. That's the same. Sorry, don't mean to be
no, that's okay.
an
So
obstructionist.
Next step appeal. You're mentioned you're very strong and confident that an appeal will go through in this case.
Attorney Matthew Hugg is going to handle the appeal. He's a highly skilled appellate attorney. There's lots of issues. If you look at the filings that I wrote in terms of the motions of limine and the memos of law on issues such as expert witnesses, jury charges, etc., he's got a solid foundation from which to work, and I'm sure he'll review the transcript and use his own judgment also. Here's Mr. Frost.
Mr. Frost. Hi.
Mr. Frost. Okay, so I had forgotten his name.
Blankets in case we're cold. Can we grab a quick word from you as well? We were just speaking with Mr. Mosfet, and firstly we asked him about reaction to the sentencing, and obviously it wasn't what you asked for, but I want to focus on one thing you said and how you said you developed fondness for your client throughout this. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, as I said, not just fondness, but love. Any attorney who doesn't love his client, or at least some part of him,
is the wrong attorney for that case. And I've gotten to know Kevin over the last year or so, and you know, there are things that happened here that I don't like, that I in fact hate, but I don't hate my client. I love my client.
Can you share his reaction at all after the sentencing? Anything he said or his emotion?
Well, it's exactly what you would imagine it would be. We knew what the sentence was going to be, or suspected what it was going to be when we came in here, and it was what we expected.
Next steps now?
We'll file a notice of appeal for him. Once that is filed, I will hand the case off to an appellate attorney, someone who specializes in appeals. That's what Kevin needs. And, you know, he has some grounds for appeal, I believe, that are strong. And, you know, I don't believe that his defense was lagging in any way, but he may think that, or his appellate counsel might think that, or the appellate division might think that. And if he wants to throw us under the bus, do it. He's fighting for his life.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So what a difference between what Mr. Mausert said. So Mr. Mausert was the first attorney to speak, versus what Mr. Frost said, who was the second attorney. So the first attorney was angry and, you know, just complaining like it was all the judge's fault. And then Mr. Frost kind of shared a little bit of the emotion, not really, but then saying, you know, maybe Mr. Monahan thinks his defense didn't do their job correctly. So weird. Same defense team, but completely different ways of reaction to the case, or in this case, the sentencing. So weird. So I want to thank everyone for being here. This case did mean a lot to me, and I wasn't planning on going live today, but when I saw that the sentencing had been done today, I wanted to talk about it sooner than later. So I do have a premiere scheduled for 11 o'clock. And for those of you who may have or may not have seen my short, there was a car accident, collision in Kentucky and Louisville, to be exact, where an 18-wheeler somehow, and I mean, I'm not a very religious person, but I do believe in miracles. By some miraculous universal force, this semi was dangling over the Ohio River. The driver of the semi was rescued by the Louisville Fire Department. She was uninjured, unharmed. I want to say unharmed because emotionally, she probably will be, you know, having to deal with some things. But she was rescued. However, at least one person in the two vehicles that were involved in the collision had life-threatening injuries. So we also want to think about them as well, because, you know, they're doing their investigation. I've been watching them slowly retract the semi back onto the bridge, and just seeing the images is enough for someone to, if you don't believe in miracles, you have to say that they were extremely lucky. That driver was extremely lucky. I don't know how that truck stopped when it did, but it did, and that's all that matters. So yeah, K-Brace, it was like, whew, it's a pretty spectacular sight. So I hope I will see you there. This live should redirect automatically, but I had some technical issues, so hopefully it will. But if not, it is scheduled. So I hope to see you there. So if not, though, have a great night. And until next time, I will see y'all on the flip side.